think you should.
Welcome to this week's episode of Whoscussion. We are your hosts from Whānau, that random guy, and as always, the sensually pleasing Harriet Skelly. Yes. So for part A, we'll be doing the Deadly Assassin, followed by the Face of Evil. So Hanan, be praised. Then we'll be doing a part B, which is me and my shadow. It's not really an 8th Doctor comic, but it's part of his timeline. Yes. And then finish it off with a First Doctor short story. I'm not got a political agenda here, guys. Story, Flywheel Revolution. We've just discussed earlier who's going to be taking us away for today, and it is Harriet Skelly, the Deadly Assassin.
Yes. This is this is the first time that the Doctor really actually spends some time on Gallifrey.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the second Doctor just before he gets regenerated, but it's not really an influence part of that. It's just sort of he shows up, gets regenerated, and goes home, basically. It's sort of the deal. I mean, of course, there's those kind of is it novels or comics that they do the CIA stuff that he was doing?
Both. It's a collection of both.
There's a collection of both, because it does get mentioned in this, of course, that he is a CIA agent, the Celestial Intervention Agency, not the Central Intelligence Agency. So yeah, there is that. So obviously, even the writers of Doctor Who also knew that they wanted something to be in between 2 and 3, like that, which is just nice. It's actually really good of the writers to do that. To have that sort of time gap exist where he can do stuff for Time Lords
and be old in the 5 Doctors.
Yeah, and it makes sense that he's old in the 5 Doctors as well, because he's, he had some life going on there. Anyway, the story is really good. It is actually great. You with it being a master story, you sort of see the end of the Master's first.
Oh, the Master's in it. Oh, hashtag spoilers.
Hashtag spoilers. Come on. This is like 40 years old.
Yeah, it is actually 40 years old. 41.
This is if you go to the TARDIS wiki and you've ever looked up the Master, you know that he is in the story, because this is when he is basically on his last legs. This is the first time we see him as like this skeletal figure that's got really bulgy eyes, and it's totally a mask. And you know that it's a mask. Come on.
Yeah.
Like I was hoping that like someone would say something about it that like explained why he was wearing this weird mask, but nope, they were trying to pass it off as real.
Yeah. Yeah, that's his actual face.
It's actually supposed to be his face. Is that all of his skin is like peeled off, and his like eyes are popping out of his skull, and everything just looks like he's like a burn victim. Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, this is obviously is a play because they'll never be able to get Roger Delgado again, because the sad things that have happened. But of course, I guess it's one of the better ways they could have gone with it, rather than trying to just immediately cast another actor to play him, is make it seem like Roger Delgado was the last Master that we could have had. I'm guessing that somewhere in line someone said, no, you actually have to keep the Master, and we can't just let him die with Roger Delgado. So that's why they went with this, which is kind of okay for me, actually. As much as Roger Delgado is the epitome of the Master.
Yeah, man.
He's still just like the Doctor, where he is that legacy. So as much as anyone can say that William Hartnell is the Doctor and will always be the original, and it's the same with Roger Delgado, is that he is the original Master for us, but he does continue. So we just have to get over that. I mean, there are some Masters that we don't have to get over because they are just no.
Yeah.
But we're just going to stick with the Deadly Assassin for right now. So the Doctor is basically tricked into coming back to Gallifrey. He basically figures out right away that he's been tricked to do this, but of course it's such an elaborate trick that he obviously has to come, where he basically gets a projected image into his mind in sort of a premonition sort of way, that the president is going to be assassinated, who's just about to retire as well, for some reason. I'm going to have to get into the Time Lord stuff in a second, but we'll just go through the story real quick. So of course, immediately as soon as he gets there, he's, people like freaking out about his Type 40 TARDIS, thinking that he's a criminal because he's not really on file at all that stuff, and that he's a CIA agent, of course.
Yeah.
Then once the president does get killed, they think that it's him because he was up there with the gun, but it wasn't actually him. The gun totally didn't actually fire. It was just because he was tricked. The Doctor basically gets himself out of being immediately disintegrated by spouting some crazy law stuff, which was really funny, is that the Doctor knew their laws better than they did for some reason. But
I'm going to have to get myself into trouble one day. I better remember this exact law right here.
Yeah, like that's totally the reason, is that it's totally a get out of jail free card. Like, if you somehow manage to get in trouble whilst the presidency is just about to go up for grabs, then you can just quote that to people. Like, it's I don't know. I don't understand why it exists either. Like, why? I'm guessing that at some point there was an arch rivalry between two people who were going to be president, and like one of them had got framed for murder, so they decided to add in this article just to stop that, like a good guy bad guy sort of scenario.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. The Doctor just remembers it, so he uses it, which is hilarious in all kinds of ways. From there, he tries to get the Castellan, is it?
Yeah, the Castellan. The one that's helping him, yeah?
Yeah, the one he tries to...
The Castellan, who actually was in Doctor Who before this actor. He was the European delegate from The Enemy of the World.
Oh, yes, he was, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Spandrel. So he was trying to basically explain to him what exactly is happening, trying to fill him in and basically get him up to speed, and basically does end up convincing him that he was not the assassin, of course, as Spindrill is obviously not as dull as everyone else. All the other time.
But he didn't believe he assassinated him the whole time. He was like, he didn't do it.
He's like, why would he leave me a note telling me that he was going to kill him? That doesn't make sense at all. So that was basically it, like immediately, which is basically how it should be, Like, if someone leaves a note saying that someone's gonna die, they're probably not the person who killed them. I mean, unless they're like actually psychotic, and it was like some sort of like weird like cryptic message that they left,
like the Riddler or something.
Yeah, like the Riddler or like the Zodiac killer. That would make more sense if that was the case. But he straight up said the president's gonna die. I'm not the one who does it, basically. So it sounds pretty reasonable to me. So it goes on from there. The Doctor basically using Spandrel to figure out, get more clues, basically. They eventually figure out that the Matrix has something to do with this, because the Master is not listed in it, even though every Time Lord is supposed to be registered in it, alive or dead. So it's a bit weird that Master's not in it.
Yeah, especially dead.
Yeah, so especially dead. So it's very interesting that he's not in there. A bunch of other reasons, and the fact that the Matrix is, I'm pretty sure we've talked about the Matrix before.
We have indeed.
But basically, it's just a time. It's supposed to be a prediction machine. That is its main function, other than being able to preserve all Time Lord life. So as soon as a Time Lord dies, they can basically just get uploaded into the Matrix and they're good to go. They don't have to worry about it at all. I mean, eventually, of course, it seems like they eventually sort of, what's the word? sort of fade into the background of it, so it becomes like one hive mind rather than being all individuals in this big world that they can live in.
Yeah, the
So
cloisters.
yeah, so it's basically more of it's a better idea of heaven, is that they eventually sort of become one with the Matrix.
Which is funny because the Master would use it as heaven.
Yeah, he does. He does go in and eventually use it as heaven. And that's the greatest thing, is that he actually like use it. They must have thought of this episode specifically where they got Missy to come back, is that the Master's obviously manipulated the Matrix before. Why wouldn't he do it again?
Yeah.
Which is great. It's fantastic. But of course, even then, the way that this Matrix seems to work seems like it's a little outdated as well. But I'm guessing there's also a lot of development that goes on between now and between then and now for the Time Lords. So especially with them having gone through a time war, so they probably
Yeah, I mean, and even before then with the trial, which is when we first ever covered the Matrix, it's way more awesome than it is at the moment.
Yeah. So. Really want to talk about this. Really want to talk about the Time Lords in this very shortly, but I want to get through the story. Is that the Doctor gets in the Matrix to try and figure out what's going on, and the Master is basically tapped in with somebody else to try and basically fight him. They have this weird Matrix fight where it's sort of like this one-on-one COD style sort of deal. They're like walking around in the jungle, like poisoning each other, trying to use the environment, which is really weird. It's like it's a computer. Like, why don't you just like have a mind battle or something?
Yeah, like he does with Morbius.
I know. I guess it's because
or Omega.
Yeah.
With the lizard undies.
It does end up being the Doctor does end up winning. That they're like trying to pass it off as though it was some energy that he has in abundance that is the reason that he won.
Artron.
Artron energy, but then that doesn't. The fact that they had this fight makes. I guess that kind of makes it seem more reasonable. Is that they knew that he had more Artron energy, so they knew that he would not win. He would not lose a mind fight. I guess.
Yeah.
Against Goth. Yes.
Chancellor Goth, who actually was one of the judges at his trial in this when he was the second Doctor.
Which is also something that I want to bring up as well. As soon as I get into the Time Lords. So we just keep getting sidetracked because of the story.
I'm so sorry.
I know, it's great. It's how it basically folds out. Is that we have to get through. So he wins the Matrix fight, gets out. The Master makes it appear like he's dead when they go and find out where they're hacking into the Matrix, Neo. Anyway,
follow the White Rabbit.
It's totally. This is totally where they got the whole idea of the Matrix. It's absolutely it. So, there's that. Thanks, Doctor Who. You're the best. So, eventually, the Doctor harkens on to the Master's plan. It is to steal a sash of Rassilon as well as his key and unlock the Eye of Harmony. Can you say 8th Doctor?
Yes, I can.
So, eventually, the Doctor basically thwarts him by basically outwitting him again. Really, she's just like, "Hey, that sash didn't actually save the president when we shot him. So what makes you think it's going to save you from the Eye of Harmony?" And the Master's like, "Oh, I didn't think of that." And then the Doctor beats him up, and that's it. And then manages to basically wreck his face. But
even more
than what it already was. Puts it all back together. He throws him into a chasm. That is great. But even then, like, the Doctor knows that the Master's going to come back because he's the Master. He just won't stay dead. So he knows. And then eventually, everything gets cleared up. He talks to one of his old counts. Like, what's the word?
It is his teacher. So it's his old tutor.
I was actually one of his old tutors.
Barusa. I love Barusa so much.
Yeah, Barusa is great. They share this interesting dialogue that I guess makes more sense when you know more about their involvement with each other and the way that the Time Lord works in general after the years of time they've had with it. But without that, it kind of seemed kind of weird, that interaction, especially considering what I'm going to go into, which is how the Time Lords are being played out at the moment, where these Time Lords, the Time Lord, the Gallifrey as it is when we're there with the assassin, deadly assassin, they seem like they're not very smart at this point. As much as they have like this cool technology, they seem like they've sort of just fallen over with all of their technical stuff and seem to be more about their traditions, rather than what science is about. Especially considering they obviously have stopped. They've lost a whole bunch of technology that they had. Like they've got, not necessarily that they had, just that they know about. Like they didn't fully understand how the Matrix worked. They didn't know that it went down into the basement and someone could tap into it. They had an interesting time handling the Type 40 TARDIS, and they didn't know what the sash really did or the key, and they weren't sure about the Eye of Harmony either, even though it was power source of all of their stuff. So
they thought it was a myth.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting that all this stuff is going on, and the Doctor is treating all of the stuff like fact, and he knows what the Matrix does. He knows how a bunch of systems works. So I don't really understand why he seems to be the smart one when the Time Lords are supposed to be smarter than him. He's not the be all and end all. And I guess this is kind of where a lot of New Who is coming off of, is that when the Fourth Doctor shows up on Gallifrey, he seems like he's the smart one. So I think that's where they're pulling out with the 10th Doctor, as him being the better Time Lord.
Yeah, which is funny because like he's not supposed to be.
Yeah, it seems to me that what happens with what's going on with the Time Lords at the moment in this episode is the result of their many years, hundreds of years, of them basically stagnating, doing nothing with their entire existence. They just stand around and talk about nothing, really. It seems like they don't have any real cares at all. They don't care about, except for political gain, of course. So they just talk about how everyone's doing, just have a nice little chin wag with each other, caring about their houses and their political power, instead of caring about additional mathematical equations or trying to alter their technology at all, trying to advance as a species. They don't seem to do any of that. They have, to the point where there was a line of dialogue that they have where they're talking about how in the old days the president would would be the president until they died, not just because they just resigned, and which is an interesting idea. Is that basically it seems like the Time Lords have just moved into that cycle of just someone's taking the lead, someone else is taking the lead. They're just naming it successor after successor, and considering they all have regenerations that would live till their proper end, so they would never die of natural causes in one of their lives until they actually reached a proper end. So like William Hartnell at his proper actual length of time, so hundreds of years, and then they would go into their second life and they'd have another few hundreds of years. So their entire dynamic and economy as well seems to reside in that as well, where they don't change for hundreds of years. Time Lords stay the same. The whole dynamic of the Time Lords remains the same for hundreds of years. It boggles the mind, and I guess it's simply because it is supposed to be an advanced civilization like that. But the way that the Time Lords are crafted it's got some real attention to detail, and I don't think it's completely by design as well. I don't think that they initially wanted the Time Lords to be exactly like they are in this, or as they are later. It's obviously something they've built on, but it makes for so much better of a of a civilization that they have these little things to them, like the fact that they've got these massive caverns underneath their city and underneath the Panopticon that they just forgot about. You know, that it would have been there for hundreds of years. Like, what were they in there for? They're massive. Like, what did they do? Were they sewer systems? Were they power conduits? What are they there for? Are they bunkers? Like, that's the sort of stuff that the Time Lords have, and that's the sort of stuff that this story propagates very well within the entire Doctor Who franchise. Time Lords are crazy, and they've got some crazy stuff going on, and the Doctor's one of them, but he seems less crazy even, which is weird because he's totally crazy. And even by Time Lord standards, they think he's crazy. So why does he seem like he's the sane one in this?
It's because he's a renegade of their culture, basically. He's seeing it as like a learned man, because when we see William Hartnell for the first time, he's pretty much like the Time Lords are represented here, where they're like a stagnant assholes, basically. Yeah. And then he grows and he learns to see the world in a broader sense. And even when he's in his third life and facing the Master, and the Master and him go on about how the Time Lords are pretty much just stagnant. Like, what are they doing? And like, they call on the Doctor when like shit hits the fan because they don't know how to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only reason he defeats Omega is because he doesn't think like a Time Lord. And like,
basically,
Omega's like, I was not expecting this.
Yeah, and it's just the interesting concept is that they are basically all powerful at this point. Well, that for someone at our level, for a civilization at our level, but especially back in the 60s, it would seem like they were fantastically powerful because they had the ability to time travel, which means effectively they can create the world as much as they like, really. But they're not. They're even in the Time Lord society, they're really not. Or even in the universe, they're not, because of the gods.
Yeah.
not just including the Ragnarok ones, but like things like Sutek and the Osirians, that the Time Lords would have got their asses handed to them. But the fact of the matter is that even though they have time travel, they're not seeking to gain any further knowledge, which is really weird, because the biggest thing about the Time Lords seems to be that they have these academies, these great academies, these great learning things, and the fact that they frown upon other people who haven't like put the time in and learn things, like that the like reporter guy, like the Time Lord reporter, which is really weird, and Barusa like basically giving him the cold shoulder because he didn't do well in school. Yeah. Like, but you're
just a reporter.
Yeah, but even then, it's like I understand your entire culture is all about doing that stuff. Then why aren't you moving forward? Why are you allowing your civilization to just like loop in on itself and crumble to the point where you've forgotten what your ancient relics do, and you don't know how to work your own matrix. Like, this is also your heaven as well. Like, why wouldn't you want to figure more about that? What's the deal here?
I wonder if it might be Rassilon's fault.
Is that he forced them into that state? I guess it is. With the Eye of Harmony, is it's forcing them into that delicate balance.
Yeah.
To remain in their status, they have to stagnate like that. Whoa.
Yeah, because like when we meet Rassilon again in Neverland and Zagreus, we meet Rassilon and he's so like old-fashioned in the way he thinks.
Yeah.
That's why he's the bad guy, is because like he hasn't progressed in the like millions of years he's been in the tower. So it's like, come on, man, really? So yeah, there's a lot of stagnation, and I like what you brought up earlier, where like when we meet the Time Lords here, they haven't progressed a heck of a lot, and then the Doctor shows them stuff about the Matrix they didn't know, and then when we next see them, they've progressed heaps, and it's literally because of the Doctor's interference.
Yeah, it totally is the Doctor's fault.
He's like, hey, the Eye of Harmony is real, and the Matrix has this cool feature where you can walk around in basically the coolest CGI ever.
The coolest CGI. It's like we've got a whole holodeck in here. What are you guys doing? Come on.
Come on, hurry up.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Time Lords sort of get portrayed very well. Even the outfits show them off as their hoity-toity selves.
Yeah.
Like, even the guard have like these weird hoity-toity outfits going on. It's like, come on, you're like glorified police officers. Why are you wearing those weird helmets? What are you doing? It's a very interesting thing, especially considering right up until this point, the Doctor had talked about the Time Lords as though they were a lot more in control. And when he saw them as the second Doctor, they were a lot more in control. They had extreme control over his Type 40. They had extreme control over him. It seems like between 3 and 4, something happened.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because of Omega, like, because he screwed Gallifrey over pretty bad.
Yeah, he sucked out all their power, but that was about it. Like, surely they would have been able eventually to draw that back, especially considering he was drawing it from the Eye of Harmony itself, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So how could they forget the Eye of Harmony existed? I don't understand. Like,
well, the thing is that they're the CIA, the ones that the Time Lords we see during the Omega crisis is the CIA, and the CIA they keep like a lot of information away. Like, because remember we Nosebung? Do you remember Nosebung from Neverland and Zagreus? Yeah. Nosebung talks about all this like cool stuff and like how the CIA is way better than the rest of the Time Lord Society, and it's just like, why would you keep it separate? And like, they've really segregated the Time Lords. They're real into segregation. Like, houses have to stand with other houses at the ceremony. They can't mix with the other houses. And other houses hate the Doctor's family. Like, they hate the Doctor's family, the rest of the Time Lords.
It was because the Doctor's family was like the top, like big wigs, aren't they?
Yeah, they're the big wigs.
And the Doctor has to be the one that messes everything up.
Yeah.
That's great.
Bloody Prydonians.
Well, it's simply because they're obviously the house of Rassilon as well.
Yeah. So
that's basically it. That's why they're the hoity-toity of the most. It's because they're the big controllers. They're the real deal. So yeah, it's very interesting.
The racism aimed at the Shobogans. like the casual racism towards the Shobogans.
Oh man, yeah. That goes on forever with Doctor Who. This casual racism of Shobogans. Oh, I counted all the Time Lords' lives, all the ones that were lost. What about those Shobogans? I
don't know.
They're not Time Lords.
They're not Time Lords.
Anyway, yeah, this story raises some very interesting questions about the Time Lords. It's the beginning of the Time Lords being in the show at all. So, it's that's basically why it raises so many questions. And they did it really well, honestly. That they they have such mystery to them that they're not just laid out on the table like this is what they're all about. Which I guess a lot of other sci-fi shows would probably fall into that trap. Whenever they like start showing off the alien race, they just they lose a lot of mystery when they do that. I'm trying to think of one example. I'm thinking like in Stargate with the Asgard, when their Asgard originally started showing up, they just sort of like had holograms and like did some crazy stuff, and you barely ever saw them. And when you did see them, they were the little grey aliens from Roswell, so they were kind of already had that mystery. But then, as soon as they started actually like being allied with them and started like showing off their stuff, they just lost all that mystery because you didn't really care that much about their civilization because it was just given to you right away. They've got a clone crisis. They've been doing all the stuff. They're the Norse gods, so this is all their stuff. So why did we care anymore? Not sure. But with the Time Lords, it's different because we got a little bit of stuff shown to us, but then we got a whole bunch of stuff that we're not too sure about, especially with them saying, oh, we don't actually know where all this stuff came from, and Rassilon is a big mystery to them at this point. Like, they were throwing that name around, and the Doctor seemed to know who he was, but nobody else does. No one else has told us who Rassilon actually is, other than apparently he started the Time Lord Society. Cool. Is he their god? Is he their actual like Adam, or is he just like the first president of whatever.
He is all three.
Yeah, he is all three. That's what we eventually find out, that he's basically the be all and end all. He's the bee's knees of the Time Lords. So it's great. It's fantastic, and we need more sci-fi like this. Come on, we need it.
We need more sci-fi like this, like a 41-year-old story.
Yeah, we do. We need more sci-fi like this. This is actually it. Is that the big problem that I see with a lot of sci-fis is that they take not enough Doctor Who. You know, they go ahead and they steal a bunch of different things from Doctor Who, from time travel to the face of evil, all that sort of stuff. Why are they not taking all the really, really good bits, like how well everything is crafted?
Yeah, I love Time Lord Society so much, like, because I just love that they're like basically like bastards, like they're space bastards, basically.
Space bastards. Yeah. That's just basically what they are. They're like the Discovery Channel TV crew, but they also like poking stuff with sticks. That's what they do.
That is 100% accurate.
And it's not really their fault. Like, it's just because Rassilon was totally a bust. Anyway, that's Deadly Assassin. I would very much suggest that anyone who listens to this podcast, if they haven't seen The Deadly Assassin, that you absolutely go and watch it, because it is really important. It is homework. All right.
Yes.
It is homework. You need to watch it, because it is very important to how the Doctor plays out from now on. Every other time we see the Time Lords. And it's another example of why the current look on Time Lords and Doctor New Who in general is not quite right. Especially with things like the Master and stuff.
Yeah, New Who doesn't handle the heritage of the show very well at all. And I know it makes us sound like downers, but I mean, there's been good stuff like Impossible Planet / Satan's Pit. But there hasn't been enough good stuff.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of good stories on their own. But the series as a whole, and New Who, has fallen flat. And it's stories like these that we need to beg the writers to go and watch, so that they understand where we're coming from.
Exactly. So basically, instead of Chris Chibnall taking over, Big Finish should just take over the TV show, and then they could do the radio and TV show together. That would be great. Well, just before we move on to the face of evil, there's one thing I wanted to bring up. And now we know that in Timeless Society, the Prodonians wear scarlet. Yes. Now, when we see them in the End of Time and in Name of the Doctor, oh, not Name of the Doctor, and Day of the Doctor, they're all wearing scarlet. So, does that mean that only the Prodonians have survived the war?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally it. Is that when Rassilon came back, I'm sure that he was just like, anyone who's not my bloodline, get off my planet.
Yeah. Leave now.
Yeah. That was probably it.
He probably drafted them, I'm thinking.
Yeah, actually, is that everyone else is just a soldier. Get out.
Yeah. Oh, are you part of the Prodonians? No, but my mother was. Does that count? Get out of here.
Yeah, that's actually probably it. I'm guessing that's also why the Master got conscripted as well.
Well, the Master's Prodonian, though.
Yeah, that's why he was brought back.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Because he's Prodonian.
Wow.
Rassilon's like the Master, because like in the End of Time, they talk about them being the children, and so I'm just like, yo, you know, because the Rassilon's the first ever Prodonian. It's just like, yes, the Master, the Doctor, the worst great grandchildren of all time.
Yeah. Solid work. That's actually one of the New Who stories that like makes sense.
Yeah.
After all the bad stuff about the Master, like if we forgive the Master being brought back by magic, that story is really good.
Yes, right. Really why is he brought back by magic? Oh, that is the worst part of that story. Like, because I actually like the End of Time, and it isn't just because the 10th Doctor dies.
Yeah, it's actually
I love it.
Really solid story. It really solidly is, and it sells the Time War very well. Better than the 50th.
There was a 50th? That's a surprise to me.
And and the whole deal with the Master being the one that like sacrifices himself to keep back the Time Lords, that's great. That's how the Doctor Master dynamic is supposed to work. Is that eventually they both start working together to try and fix a problem, because otherwise the Master's going to die and he doesn't want to die. And then that's basically it. Which I guess is kind of the dynamic that doesn't actually work in this one, in the Deadly Assassin, is that he doesn't have that trying to solve the problem with the Master.
Yeah.
And I guess the only reason that works in this is because the Master's like actually going to destroy the planet. And he actually gets close to doing it this time. So I guess that's probably it. It's the Time Lords.
He's like,
break it up.
I need a new regeneration cycle, so I'm going to destroy everything. Why don't you just ask for it from the High Council? Nah, I'm going to destroy everything. Yeah. Why don't you just get turned into Matrix-like data, and then you could live forever, literally, inside the Matrix? Nope. Blow up the whole planet.
I guess that's another thing about the Master we don't really fully comprehend, is why he bothers so hard to keep himself alive when he could just be part of the Matrix. I guess I guess it would force him to be stagnant. That's the idea, is that he would actually have to fall in with the rest of the Time Lords if he ever died. That's a good reason to hate them all.
Yeah, exactly. Good on the Master. I'm kind of awesome. I'm the Master. This is my face. It kind of looks like it. Nope, it's my face.
It's totally a face, but it's a mask. No, it's a face.
That's the special effect that needs the George Lucas treatment, for real.
It actually does.
Yeah. So with that lovely excursion into Gallifreyan lore, and that's lore LORE, we're actually, there's a little bit of LAW in there as well, so
yeah, there is.
Quite a lot actually. We'll whip on to the Face of Evil. So it was a really hard decision for Harry and Scully and I to come to terms as to who actually covered which story, because the Face of Evil is another bloody good story. I can now see why everybody references the Fourth Doctor as being the best. He has a lot of amazing stories.
He really does.
And I love the beginning of this, when the Doctor is thinking aloud, but it looks like he's talking to the audience. I mean, he obviously isn't, but...
Well, he is, but he isn't.
Yeah, he is, but he isn't. But I just love how like he's thinking aloud, and I love that sort of... I suppose eccentricity, which I know is really cliche when you're talking about Tom Baker, but just the eccentricity of the Fourth Doctor it just shines. And I love like his ability to go from his goofy bohemian self to the violent self it's like the drop of a hat. You can see sort of an insane element as well, and like the inklings of 6 and 7 in his performance, with the fact that he can just become dark so quickly. Like in the Deadly Assassin, when he fights Goth, which I know we just finished talking about the Deadly Assassin, but the fight against Goth, like seriously, I go back and rewatch episode 2 just so I can see that again, and the beginning of episode 3. It's so great. Why is there a CGI battlefield? Who cares? It's awesome. Why does Goth know what a samurai is? I don't care. It's awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
It's just like it's just like a visual spectacle. Now, the Face of Evil is way more self-contained than the Deadly Assassin. It doesn't leave like any questions unanswered. Basically, the Doctor lands on a planet of primitives at first, and we're introduced to a woman called Leela, and she is a member of a tribe called the Sever Team, and she has blasphemed. She's getting pushed out of her society because of this blasphemy, and she kind of wants a whole bunch of other people to follow. Her dad dies at the beginning, which is real random.
And real gruesome too.
Yeah, real gruesome, but like she just like never mentions it again. That's the only thing that sort of irked me about the story. I was like, sure, you'd bring up your dead dad at least once.
Yeah, I guess she didn't. I guess the idea was that they that she didn't need to have a dad at all.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was the idea, is that they didn't want any sort of like ties to this other than that, but then they needed to explain some stuff, so they just had him die. But
Yeah, they're
then
like,
the
and
story
Dad's dead.
Yeah, but then the story doesn't play out right because she doesn't care. I mean, I guess like if she had already severed ties with her dad, and
it seems like they have as well.
Yeah, it did kind of seem like that she was not really caring too much about him, and that like she had already basically given up enough on him because of his care for the
Zoannon. The religion of Zoannon.
That she gave up on him, but he still seemed to care enough for her to try and stop that. But she was just like, wait, you know what, Dad? I don't care.
Yeah, I actually don't care. You know what? Go get killed by something off screen. Yeah, it's funny because like he gets killed off screen, right? And you're thinking, oh, maybe this episode's going to play it safe. No, so many people die in this story that like, how is this not called the Deadly Assassin? There is so much killing in the story. It's like, I can see why Mary Whitehouse wanted to close down Doctor Who, man. Because like, classic Who is so violent and it doesn't pull any punches. How the show is still G-rated on DVD, I will never understand. But
wow. I have an idea.
Oh, and that idea is?
That idea is that the board of communication, I guess. Who to do it? I'm pretty sure that they're the ones to do it. Who went and decided to take a look at this, and obviously to give it its rating. They saw the BBC logo on it and the Doctor Who logo on it. I'm like, it's got to be G-rated.
Exactly.
Or they went and saw the runtime and were like, I'm not watching this.
G. There you go. Those are both the correct answer as far as I'm concerned. That's how these are G-rated. But so the Doctor ends up meeting Leela after she's been pushed out. The Neva, who's the high priest of their society, he sends out people to go kill Leela. The Doctor ends up helping Leela, and I love the Doctor meets Leela. They have a chinwag about stuff. She thinks he's their Satan. He's like, I'm not Satan. And she's all like, are you sure? He's like, yes. And he goes, here, have a jelly baby. So it's right. They say the evil one eats babies. He's like, no. They're just lollies. Like, seriously, like, they're sweets. And I love when they try to shoot the Doctor and they like barely miss him. And he's like, I certainly hope that was a great shot or a bad shot. Either way, I'm glad I'm alive. Like, and so the Doctor ends up meeting them. He tries to explain what's going on, what he thinks has happened, and he's come to the understanding that he might actually be the evil one. He's trying to figure out why there's an effigy of his face on the mountain, and there's this fella called Neva, their high priest, who I brought up earlier, and I love him to pieces. So why the story works, because I mean this could have been so hammy, and the good thing is it's not. I think one of the main reasons it works is because A, the British know how to act. It's just like they just genetically are good at it, and B, they give it so much seriousness. They play it straight the whole time. Neva is this religious zealot, and I love the performance that David Garfield, who plays Neva, gives when he's trying to exorcise the demons out of the evil one. And like he gives it that believability that this is a culture that's been handed down to him from probably a lineage of hundreds of high priests, and the performance that never gives up. No one in not even the extras are trying to laugh, because like it is funny. But the thing is that like that happens in real life as well, is when you see the cultures of a less educated society, and it does seem funny, but to them it's not a laughing matter. And so for them to all play it straight, it works. It sells the believability of this, and it kept me invested. The problem is though, then we meet the Tesh.
Yes. And
for some reason they're not as straight-laced as the Sever team are. So basically there's these two societies. There's the Sever team and the Tesh. The Doctor works out pretty quickly that they are descendants or people who, or they might have been primitive people who were visited by some space travelers who were made of two groups, the survey team and the technicians. And basically, over the hundreds of years of them being separated from their past, it's devolved into Sevatim and the Tesh. They have become to hate each other because of their religious ideology, and you find out it's because they both have the same god, and the god's been feeding them the wrong information, and the god is a computer that's Tom Baker. Sorry, I mean the Fourth Doctor.
Yes.
And just, I love when he finally gives it the realization to both sides that they are actually being played by their god, and their god is actually the reason that they're all dying and they're constantly living in fear. It's because their god wants it to be that way. There's an amazing confrontation between the Fourth Doctor and Xoanon, which is the supercomputer that has his image, and I just there's this moment where the Doctor says, "I'm real. I'm here, I'm tangible, and I'm real. You cannot unthink me." And Xoanon has this amazing breakdown, and like hats off to Tom Baker and the sound design team, where he says, who am I, until it devolves into a child. And I loved that. That was like the creme de la creme for me. And it's just that, like, seeing the face of Xoanon, and then it devolves into the voice of a child, and like that innocence lost, basically. And just beautiful. And the only downside for me is the performance of who played the Tesh. There was one, the leader of the Tesh was my favorite, because he just reminded me of Michael Goff, and I love Michael Goff. He played the Celestial Toymaker, so I was just like, yeah, you're Michael Goff, the diet version.
Yeah.
And he was great, but the rest of the Tesh, I don't know, I feel like they didn't quite play it as straight as the Sevatim did, because the Sevatim were very believable. Every character you understood their motivations, you understood their ideology, and even though you don't see the rest of the village, they make it feel like there's heaps of them. And so that was really good. The Tesh, a little bit less, but other than that, as a whole story, it's really, really good. I would suggest watching this. Thankfully, it takes place right after the Deadly Assassin, and we get ourselves the new companion, Leela. And I love Leela. I love Leela to pieces.
It's the best.
She's great, but she goes around violently murdering people, and the Doctor's like, please stop doing that.
Yeah, this is the actual reason why we have Leela from Futurama, by the way. This is actually it.
Oh, really?
She is totally the reason for this, because that's why Leela in Futurama is extremely violent and capable of killing pretty much anyone. A bit alien, and to some people, an anime sex lady. So that's basically why.
Oh my actual god. So I've just had a look, and yeah, I didn't know that. She's actually based on Leela.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. Man, that shows how popular Tom Baker's run was in the States, man. Like,
it was extremely popular. And the best thing is that they also have made jokes about Tom Baker's Doctor in Futurama. And it's always Tom Baker. It's always Tom Baker's Doctor.
Yeah, it's always Tom Baker's Doctor. Yeah, because Tom Baker's Doctor's even in the Family Guy Blue Harvest special.
Yeah.
He's like, why does hyperspace always look so weird? And just like, digga-digging, Tom Baker's face. The actual intro from Doctor Who's so good. But yeah, so the Leela has this thorn that can paralyze people, and she uses a dead paralyzed person to block a doorway. I was like, that's pretty gruesome.
It is fantastic.
I was just like, whoa! I can see why Mary Whithouse hated the show. Like, seriously. So many moments in this, I'm just like, that's why she wanted this series banned. So...
Yep.
I love how, like, brutal Leela is, and the Doctor's like, stop being brutal, and she just doesn't, like, at all.
She doesn't stop at all. Like, she's like, okay, Doctor, dead.
But there's this amazing scene where the Doctor is being tested to see if he's mortal, and there's these bugs that, like, rip flesh off people, and this Leela says, you can't do this, and this guy slaps Leela, and the Doctor goes, who is that man? And then he's like, who? And then the Doctor throws all the bugs on this dude. And he screams like a little bitch and runs away. And the Doctor goes, that man. And I was just like, Doctor, you just murdered that guy. Like, he is dead.
Well, thing is that it doesn't seem like they were like, one of them didn't apparently seem to be able to kill a man, but it was probably able to like rip his arm off.
Yeah.
So yeah, he severely hurt that guy.
Who was that man?
And
Who?
then he turns around. He says to Leela, "I'm the man who never would."
Yeah. Yes. Yes, he does. He does exactly that. Oh, that's amazing. That's 100% what he says. But that was such a good call. Yes, so that is part A for this week. Just wow, check out both of these stories. They're both really good. I am really looking forward to the next story, because the next story is, I believe, The Invisible Enemy, if memory serves me well. Is it The Invisible Enemy? No, it's not.
They couldn't have two invisible enemies in the same. Like,
yeah, I know. Never mind.
Right after each
We are
other.
way away from The Invisible Enemy. I was kind of hoping Invisible Enemy was next because I love K9, but it's not. Anyway,
For K9.
yeah, I love K9. Affirmative.
No, that's what I'm
mistress.
saying. That's what I'm saying. I can't wait. I can't wait for K9.
Affirmative, mistress. But yes. So that's part A for this week. We will catch you over on part B.
On the flip side.
On the flip side.